We'll call this January 23rd City Council meeting to order. Would you call a roll, please?
Briggs.
Yes.
Shivers.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Haig.
Yes.
First item on the agenda is a presentation of the 2022 audit and financial report. Mr. Slagle.
Yes, Your Honor, we're going to go straight to Roger Haynes to begin with and present the audit. And we've got another good audit to report on this evening, and he will introduce our audit team.
Good evening, Council. It takes a while to get a fiscal year wrapped up on paper and print, but we are pleased tonight to provide to Council our annual comprehensive financial report, which you have before you, and of course, auditor's communication letter. To go over this year's audit information and result, we have with us this evening Kristen Brown, CPA, Williams Keepers lead manager on governmental audits, and she will also hit some highlights that are within the annual comprehensive financial report. And of course, any questions may be asked of her while she's here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me today. So like Roger mentioned, my name is Kristen Brown. I was the audit manager on the City of Mexico audit this year. Amanda Schultz was the audit partner consistent with previous years, as well as Mercedes Kendall was the audit in charge. Before we get to the audit reports, this slide provides some information about our government team. Our team is quite a bit bigger than just the three of us. We collectively serve many government clients, including cities, counties, public employee retirement systems, and a variety of other special purpose governments. This slide should say we issued 3 reports this year. The first 2 reports are issued under generally accepted auditing standards. These are the opinion on the financial statements and the communications to the mayor and city council, which I'll cover in more detail here in a little bit. But the third report we issued this year is in compliance with generally accepted government auditing standards. And this report is kind of a mouthful, so bear with me. It is called the Report on Compliance for the U.S. Department of Treasury Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Program, and its requirements for an alternative compliance examination engagement. So what does this mean? The city was eligible for this engagement in lieu of a single audit, as the city expended more than $750,000 in relief funding and less than $750,000 in any other federal funding. So the results of this examination disclosed no matters that were required to be reported under government auditing standards. So the city did issue an annual comprehensive financial report this year, or an ACFR. In addition to the financial section, which is required under generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, the ACFR also includes the introductory and the statistical sections, both of which are an additional GFOA requirement, and as such, this report is a sign of excellence in financial reporting. So a copy of the certificate for the fiscal year 2021 audit is included next, but they received the GFOA certificate for the 33rd consecutive year. And they plan on submitting again this year, so I'm sure there will be good news to report next year as well. So as mentioned previously, the financial section of the report is required under GAAP, so that will be the focus of my presentation this evening. So the financial section includes the components listed here, most of which we will be going over here shortly. So the first component is the independent auditor's report, which is on pages 1 through 3. So the key takeaway from this slide is that we issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the city's financial statements as of and for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2022. So this is the best opinion that you can receive through a financial statement audit, and it means that the users of the city's financial statements can rely on them. So if you compare this report to the prior year report, it looks quite a bit different. So auditing standards required us to implement a new type of report, same opinion, but the opinion comes first, and then it just provides some clarification on management responsibilities and auditor's responsibilities. So if you compare the two, you'll see some differences there. But in the end, the opinion is what matters, and you guys received an unmodified opinion again this year. The management discussion and analysis is the next component, and this is on pages 4 through 16 of the financial statements. This provides a summary of activity for the city in plain English. So the city's financial statements themselves are not comparative, but the MD&A does compare the current year to the prior year and includes a high-level overview of financial as well as other factors that impact the city and its financial statements. So the first set of financial statements presented in the reports are the government-wide statements on pages 17 through 18. The city's governmental and business type activities are included in these statements, so everything the city has to account for is included here. This includes all of its funds, all assets, including capital assets, and all of its liabilities, which includes long-term debt. So at a very high level, the statement of net position, or the balance sheet, is presented on page 17. So total assets and deferred outflows increased about 1.6 million, or 2%. This is primarily due to a lease receivable recognized with the implementation of GASB 87. So you'll see me referring to GASB 87 quite a bit throughout this presentation. So the GASB required this statement be implemented this year, and it did apply to the city as they were a lessor for a lease that extended beyond 12 months. So this standard required a lease receivable for the present value of the future lease payments to be recorded, as well as the unearned revenue related to that lease. So essentially, this brought the lease to the balance sheet, and instead of it just being recorded as lease income on the income statement. The total liabilities and deferred inflows decreased about 2.8 million, or 15%, primarily due to GASB 68 activity related to the loggers pension plan, as well as scheduled debt service payments. On page 18 is the statement of activities. So the beginning net position was restated due to that implementation of GASB 87. Total revenue increased 2.1 million, or 16%, primarily due to an increase in sales tax revenue and the recognition of ARPA funds that were spent during fiscal year 22 as revenue in the current year. Total expenses increased about $836,000, or 8%, again primarily due to GASB 68 activity related to loggers. The second set of financial statements presented in the report are the fund financial statements, and those start on page 19. And these are on the modified accrual basis of accounting. So that means GASB 68 doesn't apply, as well as capital assets aren't recorded, as well as long-term debt are not recorded in these statements. So the balance sheet on page 19, the lease receivable is recognized with the implementation of GASB 87, and the total fund balance is 10 million. And then on page 20, we have a reconciliation to the entity-wide statement of net position. Again, that's the difference between modified accrual basis accounting and accrual basis of accounting. On page 21, we have the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So total revenues increased 1.5 million, or 15%, primarily due to an increase in sales tax revenue, as well as the recognition of the ARPA funds I mentioned previously. Total expenses decreased 1.1 million, or about 10%, primarily due to a decrease in capital outlay expenditures. And then there was an increase in net change in fund balance. And then on page 22 is the reconciliation, again, to the entity-wide statement of activities. The next set of statements are for the proprietary funds. So the statement of net position is on page 23. So total assets decreased $536,000 or 2%, primarily due to GASB 68 loggers activity, which did decrease the net pension plan asset. Total deferred outflows of resources increased $12,000 or increased 85% due to the GASB 68 activity related to the loggers plan. Total liabilities decreased $611,000 or 8%, primarily due to scheduled debt service payments. And then total deferred inflows of resources decreased $425,000 or 74%, again, due to loggers pension plan activity. That left total net position of $15.1 million for the year. The statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund net position is on page 24. So operating revenues remain consistent during the year. Operating expenses increased $479,000 or 17%, primarily due to increases in salaries and wages, as well as bad debt expenses related to Noble Health. And then there was a continued positive change in net position, but an overall decrease compared to the prior fiscal year. And then the last statement is the statement of cash flows on page 25. There was an overall increase in cash and cash equivalents at year end. After the financial statements are the footnotes beginning on page 26. So the footnotes provide a key to understanding the amounts recorded in the financial statements and give a breakdown of a lot of more important information that helps you understand the financial statements. So overall, the notes were fairly consistent with the prior year, except for note 5, which disclosed information related to that lease receivable as a result of GASB 87 applying this year. Note 16 discusses the restatement, again related to GASB 87 applying this year. And then note 17 discusses a subsequent event related to the sale of the NID property, which occurred after September 30th, 2022. So due to the large size of the sale and the disclosure of the property elsewhere in the financial statements, it was required to be disclosed here as a subsequent event. Note 1 to the financial statements describes all the accounting policies of the city. And then the key notes we like to hit on are Note 6, which discusses capital assets. Note 7 discusses long-term debt. Note 9 discusses commitments and contingencies. And Note 12 discusses the pension plan with loggers. And that wraps up the financial statement section of my presentation. Any questions about the financial statements or anything we do to audit them? Okay. I will move on to the auditor's communication letter. So this letter is required under our auditing standards. We are required to communicate this information to those charged with governance for the city, and so the mayor and the council serve that role for the City of Mexico. This letter just describes the planned scope and timing of the audit, as well as any significant audit findings. So like I've mentioned several times, GASB 87 was implemented in the current year. There is an upcoming standard that could impact the city for the next fiscal year, which is GASB 91 related to conduit debt. And this will mainly require additional disclosures related to the conduit debt obligations of the city. This discusses any significant estimates that the city has. For the City of Mexico, this is the allowance for uncollectible receivable balances, the useful lives of capital assets, the fair value of contributions, the post-closure liability related to the landfill, and the net pension asset and related deferred outflows and inflows of resources related to the pension plan. We note that disclosures in the financial statements are neutral, consistent, and clear, and the key disclosures are included. We had no difficulties in working with personnel. There were no uncorrected misstatements noted. We did assist management with posting entries related to GASB 68 or the loggers pension plan, which is consistent with previous years, as the information is not available till audit fieldwork. And then again, no disagreements or difficulties working with management. Roger and Vicki and their teams are always prepared and provide us anything that we request as a part of our audit procedures. And then then also included in this letter is our consideration of internal control over financial reporting. We discussed that we look at internal control as a basis for designing our audit procedures, but we do not issue an opinion on internal control. So this consideration includes procedures to evaluate the design of controls as well as determine whether they have been implemented, but we do not test the effectiveness of those controls. Again, we do not issue an opinion, but we would report any deficiencies that we find over the course of our testing, and I'm happy to report we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control through our processes. Right, I'd be happy to entertain any questions, but otherwise, we appreciate the opportunity to be of service to the city, and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm probably the only one who doesn't know, but what is GASB 91 conduit debt?
That is a new standard that will impact the city for the next fiscal year. So it's basically a standard that wants to clarify any conduit debt obligations that an entity has.
What is a conduit debt?
What is a conduit debt? It's a debt that the city is, I'm not going to be able to explain it to you, I don't think.
No, then I won't know the answer.
Okay. There are conduit debt obligations, let me look at the footnote, where we have disclosures already related to conduit debt, but I think it's just going to clarify some and provide additional information of, let's see. It is footnote 11, and for the City of Mexico, it's related to the industrial revenue bonds. So again, the city has no liability related to these conduit debts, but they are required to disclose them. So I think it's just going to clarify that additionally in the future.
Your Honor, what that would generally also mean is that we were the sponsor through industrial revenue, such as for the Arthur Center. And so we were the sponsor for those, even though it's on their own and it's a conduit through them, but we still have to say, hey, we did this, and it could also include Chapter 100s.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, so we, as part of our audit procedures, we do confirm those balances, and that's how we get to this disclosure here in the financial statements.
The other thing that Chris mentioned is, of course, the GASB 87, where we had to show our leases receivable, but she also mentioned things that happened after the fiscal year, which is the sale of the MAB AP Green property. So that will have a significant change in our financials on the leases next year, because with the sale of those properties, we'll no longer have the lease of HWI or the cell tower lease.
Yeah, so I think the only remaining lease would be the Home Depot lease that will be disclosed. So, yeah, a lot of work to prepare those entries, make those adjustments, and then it just be sold. But that's part of it.
Anyone have any questions?
No, I was going to ask about just what he talked about. So.
Yeah.
Anybody else? We thank you for your audit, and we thank Roger and his team for doing an excellent job once again. 33 years or 34 years, would you say?
Hopefully 34, 33 so far.
33.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of January 9th regular meeting.
I'll move for approval of minutes, January 9th.
Briggs,
Yes.
Shivers,
Yes.
Williams. Miller,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
Next item under other business is the staff report accepting the proposal from Socket Telecommunication for wide area network connectivity, internet access, and voice over internet protocol services. Mr. Slager.
Yes, Your Honor, we have come to the end of our contract with our current provider, and therefore we looked at proposals from everyone in regards to providing the services, and to cover the details of what we looked at and the recommendation, Drew Wilford.
Good evening, Council. As Bruce mentioned, we have come to the end of our term with Spectrum Enterprise in December, actually. So So we requested proposals for wide area network, internet connectivity, and voice over internet protocol services. Kind of three separate items, really, when you get down to it. That was placed in the Mexico Ledger on December 14th, and we had an actual mandatory pre-bid meeting, which required any vendor that was interested in submitting a bid to be on the site, where we actually held a discussion in this room and then walked site to site. I should say we drove site to site, but walked through the sites and actually showed them where connections would be at. So I felt that vendors had a very good feel for what they were actually getting into. Then on January 17th, we actually opened the proposals, and we received 5 of them. And Socket Telecommunications came in as the most recommended proposal. And we got to that point by reviewing a number of items. We reviewed bandwidth, which is your data transmission rate. We reviewed network stability, customer service, proposed hardware, and a number of other items. Upgradability, we call references. We take this change in technology very seriously, because this new internet system will actually be fiber optic based. So it will bring fiber to the wastewater plant, it'll bring it to our maintenance building, which we do have fiber there currently, but it'll be much greater speed. And then the animal shelter and the municipal pool are all going to benefit from this. In addition, City Hall's speed will go up by a factor of 5. So we're looking at a substantial increase here in services that are being offered. Additionally, the phone system will have a substantial upgrade to it, in which we will be moving from more of a traditional system to what you might call a cloud-based system. And with that, we have a number of opportunities to automate different items in our telecommunications side, and I think that's going to show some efficiency improvements in the number of lines we require, the hardware we require, things of that nature. So when we are evaluating these things, we did look at what we currently pay. Just to get a base here, we pay about $2,697 a month, round up there, $698 a month. And so by accepting Socket's proposal, this would increase the monthly reoccurring cost by nearly $70 per month. We do feel like that is very reasonable, and we feel like the additional services provided will more than make up for that. Also, there is going to be some changes. The numbers you see before you are from the request for proposal. I would expect some of those numbers to vary. There will also be some additional costs too for kind of change in our internal hardware. So this covers the vendor's side. We may very well have some changes to our own side internally to the buildings that we need to make. And our current budget for the fiscal year does allow $50,000 for these items to take place. As you can see, the Socket Telecommunications proposal included just under $35,000 for the initial setup. That includes a $25,000 down payment, and with that was to minimize our monthly reoccurring costs, which you see the MRC is monthly reoccurring costs there, which will go up to $2,763.95. And that covers both internet and voice. So we're sitting pretty good with that, and we have provided a comparison sheet between the 3 lowest bidders in your packet. So at this point, staff would recommend we proceed and accept the proposal from Socket Telecommunications. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
How fast will they start implementation?
How fast will they start?
The implementation, because it's out December 22nd, right? That we fulfilled it with Spectrum?
They will be starting implementation. Actually, they're working on initial documents already. So I would imagine start of construction to be maybe about a month and a half off perhaps, but they are committed to end of June to be completely, fully online. So it's going to be a process, because there is no good fiber optic connection, or even, I should say, there is no fiber available out of the wastewater plant. So they're talking about having to run fiber optic down Route J and things of that nature. So there'll be some construction involved.
Questions? Y'all's pleasure.
We accept the proposal from Socket Telecommunications for wide area network connectivity, internet, and voice over.
Second.
Briggs,
Yes.
Shivers,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is appointment of various boards. Mr. Slagle.
Yes, Your Honor. On the Mexico Airport Advisory Board, you have Roger Dubert, Mark Stewart. Phyllis Hornbeck's terms has expired. Mr. Dubert and Mr. Stewart have wished reappointment. We've not received any other applicants at this time. This would be for a 3-year term, and this would be by council appointment.
A motion to reappoint Roger Dubert and Mark Stewart to the Airport Advisory Board.
Second.
Briggs,
Yes.
Shivers,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
Your Honor, the next board is the University of Missouri Extension Council. We have one appointment to that board. Currently, that position is vacant. We did receive the one application from Amy Leecount expressing interest. She has served on the board before on her own elected. She is a resident of the city, and this would be for a 2-year term.
I move we appoint Amy LeCount to the University Extension Council.
Second.
Briggs,
Yes.
Shivers,
Yes.
Williams, Miller,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
On the Zoning Board of Adjustment, James Wooten's term is expired, and then we also had a resignation. Mr. Wooten would like to be reappointed. We haven't received any other applicants. This is a appointment by the city manager. This is a 5-year term. So therefore, I would recommend the appointment of James Wooten and ask that the council concur with my appointment recommendation.
I move that we accept James Wooten's application,
Second.
or reappointment, I should say.
Briggs,
Yes.
Shivers,
Yes.
Williams, Miller,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is payment of claims.
Make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Briggs,
Yes.
Shivers,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
Next item are comments from the council. We'll begin with Mr. Steve.
I'm nothing at this time. I'll pass it on.
First, Roger, Vicky, great job, 33 years. Next, I have a little diatribe. Sorry, I'll look at my notes here. So, after the last meeting, I heard that Russell was gone completely, and we were looking for a new economic development director, but we weren't receiving any applications. So I went home and decided, let me see how this is, because I know we've had this battle in the past. So what I found, or what I didn't find, was nowhere to find the job except for the Mexico City website. I went to LinkedIn, I went to Indeed, I went to ZipRecruiter, I went to Grand Missouri Economic Board, I went to the state board, and the only place was here. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of unemployed economic development directors in Mexico, Missouri that are looking at our website. That being said, sorry, I gotta open my phone again. This is the same deal I mentioned with the police department before. We don't put our apps out there. We put it on our website, put it on Facebook, and we hope. And I said, we should be advertising more. We should be putting it out there. We should be putting it in Illinois. You know, those cops are wanting to get out of there. And that's another reason that I went and looked this time, because I was told, oh, we're doing all that. We're doing that. We're putting it out there. And then I go out here and I look, and it's not there. When we hired the chief, we did a search, we did a group, the council was involved, we made a choice. When we hired Bruce, we did a search, we made a choice, we did that. When we hired Drew, that was an internal hire. When Roger leaves, I imagine Vicky will be a shoe-in for Roger's job. When it comes to economic development director, we don't have a built-in person. So I feel like, especially with all the businesses that we've lost over the last few years, this is a position that we really need to get out there, put it out there, put it everywhere, get as many applicants and get as large a pool as we can. We shouldn't be bending qualifications. We shouldn't be just, this is what we got. And I know that, with the form of government we have, you don't have to listen to me, you can do whatever you want. But I would hope, with everything that's been going on in our community, we are really just one major employer away from a disaster. I can imagine if True or something happened to Spartan. I mean, this is a very important position. And so I just hope that you'll take my advice under consideration, include us in the process, and maybe start over, get a recruiter, whatever we need to do to get some applicants, because I don't think it's right we just go with one applicant or two applicants in this time for this kind of job. So.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Briggs?
Well, if you went to the gala and donated money on Saturday night, it was quite a performance, and Presser remains one of our shining stars in the community. And so we have some new talent that I had not seen before, so that was pleasant to see. Really, I have nothing else to add to that. So,
Okay.
I have to say, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Chris. I do agree that we do have to reach out to make sure we have qualified applicants in all of our positions. I've heard that from some of the directors before as well, that they didn't feel that we're doing the reach out that we possibly could be doing. Do you want to say if you were able to go to the MLK celebration? The mayor did an excellent job. It was a really nice turnout, so it was good to see everybody, and I forgot all about it. There was a funeral that day, and I totally forgot about the Presser thing, so I was upset when I got online on Sunday and was like, I missed it. So, that's all I have to say.
Mr. Slagle?
Nothing this time, Your Honor.
Well, same things that you talked about. I was at the gala, and it was great, and if you missed it, you missed. It was a lot of music that was from the 60s and the 70s, and it was good, and it was just a little different. And also the Martin Luther King celebration was pretty well attended. We had some good speeches by junior high kids, and good songs by some elementary kids. Weren't they elementary?
They were fourth graders.
That's right.
From Eugene Field.
So if you missed it, again, you missed that. So, okay, at this time we have public comments. If you'd like to make a public comment, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and hold your comments to 3 minutes. Floor is open.
Hello, my name is Chris Newbrow, and I live at 1115 East Promenade here in Mexico. I'd like to talk with the City Council as a private citizen about a problem that's been going on for several years that I'm aware of, and I suspect a lot longer than that. Along East Anderson Street in Mexico, in front of McMillan School and to the east, parents picking up their children from the school have been parking along the street while waiting for the school's release time. Now, normally this doesn't cause a problem, but on December 17, 2022, it caused a great concern when my mom, who is 86 years old and who lives at 1305 East Anderson, right next to the school, suffered a coughing fit that cut off her airway for the most part. She was able to make it to her neighbor's house. I was out of town, but guess what? There was a vehicle blocking the driveway. And her neighbor went out after calling 911 to tell them to move because of an ambulance arriving, and the person just stared at him, he said. The person moved finally but was not happy and told him he wasn't happy. I addressed this concern with Mexico Public Safety Major Bryce Mesco, and extra patrol was given to the school. The SRO confirmed to me. My mom remained in the hospital in a nursing center until I brought her home on Friday, January 13th. On that day, I went to pick up her medicines for her, and upon mine and my wife's return, there was a pickup truck blocking my mom's property, or my mom's driveway rather. He was busy loading his kid in the truck, and I asked him to move. He turned around and told me to get lost. I asked how he'd like it if I followed him home and blocked his driveway for a time, and some choice words were said, which I'd like to publicly apologize now because I lost my temper. And the traffic monitor for the school caught an earful of what was said as well, so I'd like to apologize to her as well. The school's resource officer was called, came to speak to us and the neighbor about the issue, but nothing was resolved. Essentially, the officer told us that if a vehicle is blocking a driveway that is breaking city ordinance, that they will write a ticket if they see it happening. But I've been told by several people living on Anderson Street, to include my mom, her neighbor, and a couple of others, that they have seen numerous times a PSD vehicle drive by with cars blocking the driveways and no action taken. This happens primarily in the afternoons. I'm not here to blame anyone. What I am asking is that since this takes place on a city street and involves school patrons, of which my mom and her neighbors are taxpaying citizens, that the city council, a member of the school, Mexico Public Schools, Public Safety Administration, a school board member, and a resident, and a member of the Mexico Public Schools Administration form a committee to look at this problem. A resident of the area shouldn't have to plan out their day to not leave or ride between 2:15 and 3:15, which my mom and her neighbors have to do every day when they leave the house when school's in session, because their driveway may be blocked when they get back home, let alone having the worry of the family worry of being able to get emergency vehicles in. I've been told emergency vehicles, they'll make sure that the emergency vehicle gets there. Well, if there's cars blocking on the south side of the street, or parked on the south side of the street, and there's cars parked on the north side, they can't get through, they'll have to turn around and drive around. It just creates a mess, may delay help. So what I'm asking for is for you guys to get with the school district. I'm going to go to the school board in February and ask the same thing, that you all form a committee and try and solve this problem. There are answers out there, but nobody's taken any kind of steps forward to do so. So I would like to see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Are there any signs up that say do not block driveways?
Nope. And the city manager, in my research, the city manager does have the right to put up a sign saying no parking from, like, I would say from 2 to 4. He does have that right around schools to put up a sign, a no parking sign in that area. But there's nothing there right now. And when they've been told, my mom wasn't told, but my mom's neighbor was told, you can't put cones in the street because it's a public street.
Can't put what?
Cones or any kind of blocking that would block traffic. They can't put those out in the street to keep their driveway open so they can get in and out. And it's not just that block there. It extends on down to the park. The other day, it was my mom's neighbor said that they blocked the entrance to the park.
You see it at most of the,
Sure.
most of the schools. I mean, where else are they?
Well,
I'm just posing.
No, I know. But here's the thing. I looked at this, and if I can continue to extend here, I'm sorry. But if you look at McMillan, they extended that on the west side of the school down to McFarland so they can pull through and out. And I asked the school resource officer on Friday, I said, well, how come that isn't being used to pull cars down? He said, well, it is, but it's dropping off for pre-K. The kindergartners are the ones that are dropped off out front of the school. And I said, well, why can't they just pull the cars down there, and let the kindergartners out there? Well, they have to walk. That's the answer they were given. They have to walk 300 feet from their parents' car to their classroom on the south end of the building. And I guess somebody thinks that's too much for a 5-year-old, 4-year-old to walk.
Your issue is just blocking the driveways.
Huh?
You're just concerned about.
But what I'm saying with that example is there's room to pull cars down and drop the kids off. There's enough room probably to put doubles in. They did over Hawthorne. They put a road around the school. I looked on the east side of the school between the fence by my mom's house and the school. There's room to put a road in there if the school district would pony up the money to do it, to alleviate the problem. But nobody's done it. They just let it continue. And it's on a public street, so that's why it's a city concern, to me, at least.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please come forward if you would like to say something. Seeing no one come forward, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Briggs?
Yes.
Shepherd?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Hay?
Yes.